Hello, this is Charles Scoble, your Golden Harvest agronomist with your Agronomy in Action Focus Friday here on Friday, September the 13th. So it is Friday the 13th. Luckily, I'm not a superstitious kind of guy, but for me, it's just another great day to go out and talk about agronomy. Well, this week we did see a huge change in the development of our crops. This dry weather across the entire state is really start to push the ripening of both the corn and the soybean crops. And though we started this week on the cooler side, the good news is that we are currently collecting heat units at a very fast rate, which is just keeping that overall crop development ahead of the 5-year average. More importantly, the forecast into this next week is hitting just consistent highs in the mid 80s and lows still in the low 60s. And so we're going to be picking up over 20 heat units a day, which is just crazy for this time of the year. If we check in with MSU's Enviro Weather site this past week, the data shows that in East Lansing, we are up to 2,339 heat units in East Lansing, 15 above the 5-year average. Over in the west side in Allegan County, we've actually hit 2,406 heat units, which is only 7 above the 5-year average. Now over in the southeast part of the state, Deerfield, Blissfield area, 2,551 heat units. They're 39 above the 5-year average. Working our way up into the Sandusky area, 2,279 heat units, 50 above the 5-year average, and wrapping up in the north central part in Ithaca area, 2,484 heat units, or 51 above the 5-year average. So for this week, let's talk about what I've been seeing in my travels and spend a little time talking about one of those hidden pests in our soybeans, what we call soybean cyst nematode. So it was a great week to travel the state and see both the trees and the crops are starting to change color both. It's exciting to see how good the corn crop is overall. I had a chance to visit up in the Cadillac area. Had seen both corn, grain, and silage, and it's all filled nearly to the tip with nice kernel depth and a good general plant health and stalk quality. I always like it when I get to see relatively green stalks and plants there with brown ear husks. It's just a great indicator to me of true dry down versus what we sometimes see as more of a die down on hybrids. I'm also starting to see ears tip down, which is exciting to see, especially being that last year, it just seemed to take forever to get those ears to tip down. And then with that wet weather we had last year and those standing ears collecting moisture, that helped to deteriorate last year's crop pretty quickly. Speaking of silage, that crop is very quickly finding its way to the pile across the state. And, some folks are actually already completely done. With the silage corn, I'm continuing to walk some fields with storm damage from a couple of weeks ago. Flying my drone, it's been easy to see the extent of the damage out there. In some cases, our golden harvest corn has actually stood better than the competition in the same field, and yet in other cases, it just didn't matter which hybrid was planted. The storm just took it down. It's also just kind of frustrating out there for folks. I realize for the most part, it's trying to get those fields harvested where it is down, and luckily they've been getting the majority of it picked up and getting it into the piles. So on a different topic, though, I'm starting to see some purple corn, getting calls on that, and just remember, folks, that this time of the year it's usually reflective of a buildup of sugars in the plant. And oftentimes, especially near the edges of the field, we see those scattered purple plants. And if you look closely at those plants, you'll usually see that the deer have kind of come in and nipped off those ears. And, in this case, the sugars that were supposed to go into that ear have now backed up into the stalk and in the leaves of those plants, and it just turns them purple. And so you can actually, though, see some differences in hybrids as far as their color this time of the year. We actually have a 90-70 hybrid that just stays super healthy this time of the year, and it's still green and still collecting lots of sunshine and turning it into sugars. And then with those ears pretty much complete, those extra sugars are staying in the stalks and kind of creating that purple color of the stalk. Now, this is nothing to worry about, but it is an interesting characteristic of that particular hybrid and a few others out there. Now, finally, I had a chance to walk and take some ear samples out of our Agronomy in Action High Management Corn Trial. It's just north of St. John's, Michigan. And, we do this trial in cooperation with the North Central Research Station arm of AgroLiquid Fertilizer. And they take all of our new U series hybrids and plant them both at standard farming practices and then again with high management practices, including some fungicide and additional population and fertility. And, right now you can definitely see some differences between these trials. I just can't wait to get the yield data here in a few weeks. And then, of course, we'll share all those photos and data here at grower meetings this coming winter. So the other thing I wanted to talk about today was a little bit on soybean cyst nematodes. This hidden pest of soybeans has been well managed by some and maybe not so well managed by others. But the reason I bring it up today is because this is a good time of the year to be thinking about testing for SCN. As you're scheduling your fields to be soil sampled for next year's fertility program, just be sure to make sure that you save part of that soil sample and just send it in for sampling for the cyst nematodes. And this is a free test. It's performed by Michigan State University, and we're already paying for it with your soybean checkoff dollars. So even if you don't think you have a problem, it doesn't take very much effort at all to get it checked. And if nothing else, it'll give you some peace of mind in those fields. Make sure that they are clean. But if you do get results back that are, having some elevated levels of SCN, let's sit down and have a talk about how we can better manage those fields for the next few years. We do have options, including the rotation between, the traditional PI 88788 varieties and now the Peking varieties we have out there. But truly the best place to start is always with taking the SCN test and, then working from there. If this is an issue that we leave unchecked, they can get really bad really fast. In fact, cysts can go through an entire generation life cycle in a matter of 21 days. So, one growing season, you can go from relatively low numbers to relatively large numbers and potentially some big yield losses in those fields. And then, of course, worse yet, you can spread that pest from one field to the next if you just don't know you have it on your farm. So let's be proactive this fall and let's test for soybean cyst nematodes. So with that, folks, I hope you had a great week and plans for even a better week ahead. This is Charles Scoville, your Golden Harvest Michigan agronomist, with your Agronomy in Action Focus Friday. Have a great weekend.